Hi, I'm Jen, and welcome to Christian Fire Poppy. I hope your guys' 21-day challenge is going very well so far. If you're new to the channel, just go ahead and watch the videos about the 21-day challenge and go ahead and put in the comments how things are going for you, how you're feeling. As far as how the challenge is going for me, I have been really enjoying it. I've had some really awesome experiences in the temple and doing family history work, and it's been very edifying to just focus every day on praying and repenting and just praying for the gathering of Israel, for the Jews and the Gentiles, and focusing on gratitude and putting it on social media, expressing it to friends. I mean, when you're expressing gratitude, you can't be feeling, anxiety or sadness at the same time. You're feeling gratitude. You're feeling happy for all that Jesus Christ has done with us, regardless of what's happening in your life and the world around you. And the most difficult part for me has been the fasting. I am doing no sweets and no meats. That has been very challenging. But whenever we do hard things, it always produces those delicious fruits of temperance, diligence, patience, and it even helps with charity. As we go through hard things, we can then feel more tender towards others who have to go through hard things. So put in the comments how things are going for you. And today we are going to be talking about how it all culminates in 23. Now, I've been talking about for a while, the last 8 to 10 years, I've just always thought, just kind of a spiritual intuition that I had, that the year 2020 was going to be very difficult and that the years 2024 and 2025 would be challenging as well. And so that kind of has been driving me to look for the signs and signals, look what's happening in the world to see if that is what is happening. And I am going to be talking about how it seems to all be culminating at the end of the year 2023. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What I present are just my own thoughts and ponderings and feelings on things. And I'm not a representative for the church. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So some notes that I put on the front here is that October 7th, 2023, possible Hanukkah warning. We're going to keep our eyes on Hanukkah and Christmas 2023, and I will be explaining why. Also, was there a possible sign that the church gave, the sign of 23? We're going to talk about the symbolism of 23 and how it's used in the scriptures. So that was given on March 23rd, 2023 of this year, and how in Daniel it talks about 2,300 days until the sanctuary cleansed. So let's dive in. All right, so I was just wanting to learn more about the symbolism of the number 23, and I think what initially got my interest was that my last two videos, after I posted them, I would realize after that the number of video that I was on was kind of correlating to the symbolism of the message that I was putting out. And I wasn't trying to do that. And so it got me thinking, well, what is the symbolism of 23? Now I am thinking, is this video going to be 23? And so this video is about 23. And I don't expect to continue this pattern, but maybe 3 of my videos in a row will have this pattern of the number of video it is correlating with the message and symbolism of the number 23. So as I looked that up, as we've been talking about the symbol of the rainbow, I thought it was interesting that the Earth's axis is tilted at 23 degrees. So we had talked about, this rainbow and how it travels from the beehive area. We know the beehive is a symbol for the church, and then it goes to the forehead and to the heart of the Revelation 12 woman. And I'm not going to explain all of this because I do in my previous videos, so you can understand what I'm talking about there, but we have talked a lot about the symbol of the rainbow and also how that goes along with heavenly signs in the sky. So, but this idea of the Earth being tilted 23 degrees reminded me that Bruce R. McConkie, he talks about this rainbow mystery and the axis of the Earth and the second coming and how it all ties together. So let me read this for you. He said, the Earth's axis is tilted 23 degrees. As we consider the reeling of the earth to and fro, the burning of the vineyard by fire to destroy the wicked, and they were once destroyed by water in the days of Noah, we are faced with a somewhat difficult problem relative to the rainbow. In the eternal sense, nothing is difficult once the whole matter has been revealed to minds prepared to receive and understand. let us lay a foundation for the place the rainbow is destined to play in the second coming by recounting the circumstances under which it apparently came into being. And he goes on to explain that he's doing a little bit of speculation here, and that's okay as long as you state it as such. That's how we form theories, that's how we learn. So we're going to be doing quite a bit of that on this video as we go down. So remember, what we're talking about is not the foundation of the gospel and what we're basing everything on. These are just things to put on our shelf of possibilities, things to ponder our maybe shelf. So he says, seed time and harvest, in the sense of one season following another, exist because the axis of the earth is tilted 23.5 degrees from upright. This is the reason we have seasons. The first reference in the scriptures to seasons as we know them is in connection with the flood of Noah. Whatever the case may be with reference to these things, something apparently happened with reference to the rainbow in Noah's day, and something is certainly going to happen with reference to it in connection with the Lord's return. It is clear that there is some relationship between the destruction of the world by water in Noah's day, the destruction by fire in the day of the Lord Jesus Christ, and the placing of the rainbow in the heavens as a token of a covenant that involved both the flood and the second coming. The Lord deliberately leaves us to ponder and wonder about many things connected with His coming. In this way, our hearts are centered upon Him, so that we will qualify in due course to receive absolute and clear revelation on many things. All right, so if you want to dive even more into this idea of mysteries and miracles of the ark and the rainbow, go to www.firepoppy.org and go to the post about the mysteries and miracles of the ark. I just didn't want to include all of it too much, but if you want to dive in more on your own, I did want to read a few of these things on there. It said the concept of seasons and the rainbow per Bruce R. McConkie. Something that he did not mention, however, was that supports this idea in Revelation 10:1. It says, "And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven, and sware by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that therein are, and the earth and the things therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer." So no more seasons. "But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel," we know the seventh angel is Adam, per Joseph Smith, "when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets." So with Adam and all the knowledge of the earth involved, it sounds like Adam and Yaman. The scripture adds the idea of Doctrine and Covenants 88, celestial glory, and this idea of the covenant path and the eternal round with Christ at the center. But I believe it expounds upon the idea of when we reach celestial glory, we will have past, present, and future before our eyes with time no longer. At that point, we will see and understand the entire full spectrum of light. The rainbow of knowledge and wisdom will be gifted, and at this season of time, we only see shades of light. Just as we look at the world around us, we see white light, we see various colors. Every once in a while, we get a glimpse of the rainbow. But eventually, we will come to see all the shades of light all at once, past, present, and future. So symbolism of the number 23. So I looked up on this Hebrew website. It actually is a pretty extensive list of numbers and symbols and the reasons why, giving all the list of the scriptures for why this might be a symbol according to scriptural themes. So on godsabcs.com, it says death and resurrection life. The word for 23 is Kaf Gimel. In Hebrew, they write two Hebrew letters, Kaf Gimel, and these signify the open palm in the act of lifting up. In this case, lifting up from death. So 23 is the number of death and resurrection life. And in Romans 1:28, it says there are 23 things listed that are worthy of death. The 23rd mention of Noah, only Noah was left together with those that were with him in the ark. The 23rd time Jacob is mentioned in Genesis 27:42, it says, "Now, when the words of her elder son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you." And the number 23 in war. So on God's command, Moses instituted a count of all the men in Israel who could go to war. in Numbers 26, 1-2. It says, counted separately, it was found that 23,000 males were Levites and would serve God instead. So the 23rd time Israel is mentioned in Genesis 47:31, it's where he has just given instructions to Joseph concerning where to bury him when he died. The 23rd time Joshua is mentioned is in Deuteronomy 31:14. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, behold, the time for you to die is near. Call Joshua and present yourselves at the tent of meeting that I may commission him. So I looked up how many times has Jerusalem been besieged. So during its long history, Jerusalem has been attacked 52 times, captured and recaptured 44 times, besieged 23 times, and destroyed twice. It also says, based on the few biblical passages that refer to this number, it appears that 23 has much to do with immorality, stubbornness, grumbling, complaining, wickedness, idolatry. So this is another take on the number 23. It said, Jeremiah preached repentance to an obstinate people for 23 years as the word of the Lord came to him. That's in Jeremiah 25:3. And Paul reminds about the fall of the 23,000 in the wilderness. It says, now these things happen as examples for us that we would not crave evil things as they also craved. Do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it written, the people sat down to eat and drink and stood up to play. Nor let us act immorally as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in one day. So in 1 Corinthians 10:7, it says, neither be ye idolaters as were some of them, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And as I read this, I thought this fits in very well with this idea of the abomination of desolation being set up, as we saw happened on October 7th. Kind of interesting that 1 Corinthians is 10:7. So October 7th, here is a message that's related. Oftentimes the abomination of desolation is related to the sin of idolatry and not putting God first. Some other interesting patterns while looking at the progression of signs in the heavens that have happened since the beginning of the restoration of the church. So the very first one was on September 23rd in 1827. This was when Joseph Smith received the Book of Mormon. That was the day before, and then the sign followed. And in 2017, we have the sign on September 23rd, 2017, and this was the Revelation 12 sign. And on that day, we had the Women's General Conference meeting, and the church started getting the higher and holier changes, thinking of it as getting spiritual wings, hastening preparation for things to come. All right, and then just a quick reminder about our 21-day challenge. Thinking Celestial, we are repenting daily, praying for the gathering of Israel, posting often on social media what you're grateful for, increasing family history and temple work, making a dietary sacrifice as a modified fast, and that stems from this Daniel 12:11. It says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So that led to October 7th. We had the attack on Israel. And then the next verse, so it's kind of a two-part prophecy with numbers. He says, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days, which is leading us to November 21st, 2023, if that is the correct interpretation. We will see on November 21st what happens, but either way, we will be blessed, and good things and blessings will come from doing this challenge. So in Psalms 90:11, it says, who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. That's kind of what we're doing in Daniel here. We're numbering our days. We're seeing what is happening, trying to make sense of what is happening in the world and why, and the timing in God's plan. So Thessalonians 5:9, it says, for God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ. So the wrath and fear is for the wicked, but unto us with faith and wisdom, as we watch and we focus on serving Jesus Christ, we keep our eyes on Jesus Christ, we are focused on salvation. So it's kind of interesting. This was actually pointed out to me by Adam on last day's temporal and spiritual preparation, and you can see I feature his channel down below. You can listen to what he has to say, but actually quite a few things that I'm presenting here are actually pointed out to me by him and gave me something to think about and explore. And so the sign of 23, was that given to the church on 3/23/23? So if we go to Daniel chapter 8, verses 14, it says, 2,300 days until the sanctuary shall be cleansed. So if we look at March 26, 2020, that was when the daily sacrifice ceased and the temples closed, and we add 2,300 days to that, that brings us to July 13th, 2006. And now we know that the beginning of this time in 2020, right before that, the Salt Lake Temple had been closed for renovations. It's being fixed, the foundations are being adjusted, and we see in the church news, it says, when will the Salt Lake Temple renovation be finished? Well, on March 23rd, 2023, we were told the Temple Square renovation update, the Salt Lake Temple's estimated completion date amended to 2026. So for thinking about the Salt Lake Temple as fulfilling maybe not the full prophecy, but an American covenant side of this prophecy, perhaps it is fulfilled in the New Jerusalem and also in Israel. But if we look at the Salt Lake Temple as being a part of that, how interesting would that be if the Salt Lake Temple were to open on July 13th, 2006? Another way to think about the sanctuary being cleansed, it talks about in the scriptures, actually the host and the sanctuary. So perhaps we're going to be seeing more tribulations that increase quickly leading up until this time frame. These are just possibilities. These are just things to think about, things to watch. Now, the things I bring up on here are things I'm not saying any specific thing is going to happen on any specific date. I do not know what is going to happen in the future. That is yet to be determined, but I think it helps to be aware of possibilities. So then when you see things start to happen, you have more clarity when things get chaotic as to where we are and what might happen, right? It's like looking at the weather and just making your best judgment and forecast. So, but as with everything else, read, judged by the Spirit. We each are accountable for feeling the Spirit and learning by the Spirit. So that's up to each one of you. I'm just presenting information. So in Daniel 8:13, it says, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So that's something to watch. So if we look at these scriptures in Daniel, this whole idea of the abomination of desolation, followed by the cleansing of the tabernacle, this is a multiple fulfillment event. So the abomination of desolation happened in the past, and one of those fulfillments was the cleansing of the temple, which is linked to the Hanukkah prophecy. So Hanukkah is all about the cleansing and the rededication of the temple. So in Daniel 8, it speaks of 2,300 days concerning persecution of the Jewish people. Similarly, in Revelation 11 and 12, John talks about two prophecies concerning another persecution of the Jews during the end times. So the main difference between these two prophecies are, one, Daniel's has been fulfilled and John's has not. And Daniel predicts the actions of Antiochus Epiphanes, and John predicts those of the Antichrist. So, but the way I look at it, this is an explanation online, but we also know there are multiple fulfillments. So Daniel has multiple fulfillments. And the prophecy of the 2,300 days, evenings and mornings, is found in Daniel 8:13-14. He says, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to him, how long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled? And it will take 2,300 days. So I'm not going to read all of this. I just threw this up here to kind of just put in your minds that there are multiple fulfillments and that one of those fulfillments is very strongly linked to Hanukkah and the cleansing of the temple. So if we're looking at this happening again, it's like we are going to see another Hanukkah event. So when Antiochus died, the Jews purified and rededicated the temple just as Daniel had predicted. And these events are commemorated in the celebration of Hanukkah. Now, it's kind of cool because we know that the date of that rededication was November 21st. That was in 164 BC. So the detailed prophecies contained in God's word are part of what makes the Bible unique. Our God can make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come, and he has revealed significant events in the future, counting out the very days of those periods of time. So in Daniel 8:14, we have the 2,300 days until the sanctuary shall be cleansed. So we're looking at July 13th, 2006 as one possible way of counting those days. And we'll just have to watch for that. So I think if we see, a lot of trials and tribulations starting to pick up, then we'll also know that this could be the cleansing of the people too. So the original idea behind the scriptures is not just, is it the cleansing of the temple, but it's also the cleansing of the heart of the people, peeling the people away from their idolatry and getting them to focus on the love and the worship of God in a true and pure way. So let's look at 7/13 in 2006. So I'll be watching for that day and seeing if that's the day of cleansing. And in First Nephi 7:13, I thought this is interesting. And in my past videos, where I talk about 9/11 and covenants, if you go back to that video, there are actually a lot of events, big events in history, that if you go to the date, it correlates really, really well with the numbers of the chapter and verse in scripture. So that's a pattern that I point out. And so it's something interesting to consider. So in 1 Nephi 7:13, it says, "And if it so be that we are faithful to him, we shall obtain the land of promise. And ye shall know at some future period that the word of the Lord shall be fulfilled concerning the destruction of Jerusalem. For all things which the Lord hath spoken concerning the destruction of Jerusalem must be fulfilled." So this is that multiple fulfillment. So just a reminder, the Book of Mormon warns us in 3 Nephi 2:1, "And it came to pass that the people began to forget those signs and wonders which they had heard, and began to be less and less astonished at a sign or a wonder from heaven, insomuch that they began to be hard in their hearts and blind in their minds, and began to disbelieve all which they had heard and seen." I think sometimes as members of the church, we think, no, I don't need to look at the signs. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to, be a good person and do what I need to do. And, but I think the scriptures tell us that we need to be careful about that we need to not close our hearts and our minds and our eyes to the world and to the signs and the wonders, because sometimes God will speak directly to us. And that's why I like to look for signs in the heavens, signs on the earth, wonders, and keep my mind open to these possibilities. And now I don't go too far where I hang my hat on every possibility and turn things upside down and let those things lead me in a way that takes me away from the church and the covenant path and the scriptures and the prophets and apostles. There's a fine balance to be had. And it's up to each of us to find that correct balance. All right, so we have talked about this before. I'll just glance over this quickly. That is Parley Pratt's voice of warning. So that came forth on the abomination of desolation day, and just a few things that he warned about. So he said specifically, this is intended as a warning voice or proclamation of truth to all people into whose hands it may fall. So Parley Pratt here counsels us that the Holy Ghost can alone guide us into all truth. So I'll let you read this on your own, and I'll just mention a few of the highlights. He talks about the importance of the more sure word of prophecy, whereunto ye do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place until the day dawn, and the day star arise in your hearts. Now, this stood out to me, obviously, because I have been noticing things in the stars lately and signs in the heavens, but also had the opportunity. Elder Holland just wrote a book called The Day Star Rising within this last year, and it was a really good read. So it says, "Now the predictions of the prophets can be clearly understood, as much so as the almanac when it foretells an eclipse." Now, it was precisely this warning and his words that really penetrated my heart, that got me to thinking about the words of Daniel the prophet and taking it literally as far as the days and the count and looking at the signs and looking at the earthquake that happened during 2020 and what came forth from that, the trumpet dropped. And let's look at the next section. So Parley-Pratt's voice of warning, it came out of the Salt Lake Temple on Abomination of Desolation Day. So looking at these dates and these signs and being guided by the Spirit as to the meaning as it goes along with the scriptures. And he says that along with all the things that we can search for, that this great treasure is foreknowledge and knowledge of things future. The books of the prophets and the spirit of prophecy were intended for this very purpose. Well did the apostles say, covet earnestly the best gifts, but rather that ye prophesy. And I think what he's talking about is having the wisdom to understand the scriptures and understand what is happening in the world around us and what is coming up as has been prophesied so that we can act accordingly. And this can only be done through the Holy Spirit. So that is what I'm attempting to do. And anything I say here can just spur you into doing your own study and learning by the Holy Spirit. So for any of you who are not aware of these scriptures, so we're going to be looking at some signs in the heaven that happened at the very beginning of these signs. So the reason this voice of warning came forth of the time capsule was because of the earthquake on March 18, 2020. So the horn on the house of the Lord, Bethel, as it says in the scripture in Amos 3 says that, shall a trumpet be blown in the city and the people not be afraid? An adversary there shall be even round about the land. So think about the year 2020 and what was happening. And it says, thy palaces shall be spoiled, and I will visit the altars of Bethel. So Bethel means house of the Lord. And the horns of the altar shall be cut off and fall to the ground. So, horn falling to the ground. And again, I'm repeating myself here. I've talked about it on previous videos, but I'm going to go somewhere with it. So I want this to be fresh on your mind. So I won't talk about Daniel 12, though. I will let you read this for yourself. Just pause it if you need a refresher on what Daniel 12 is and how we were looking at October 7th as being the setting up of the abomination of desolation, 1290 days from when the daily sacrifice ceased. So, as I've been looking at these signs in the heavens, I've been thinking to myself, well, maybe I can go back in time and see if on these very specific dates, these big events, if there were signs in the heavens that supported that. And I found it very interesting. And you can decide what you will about this. Maybe this is just all a big coincidence. And it's like when you look up in the clouds and you see what you want to see. But I do have a very specific method. And that is that all of the names are connected to scriptures by Strong's Concordance. So every asteroid has one specific number indexed to it. And every word in the scriptures has a specific number indexed to it as well. So see the number here. So right now for the asteroid idols, the number is 1554 Hebrew. And so that's not to say that the name of the asteroid is idols. If there's no number, that is the actual name of the asteroid. So if you go to Stellarium, program Stellarium, and you can look at this. If you search for man, you will see man in this location. And you'll see the date right here is March 18th. So this is the day of the earthquake, the day of the big signs happening. And you can see on March 18th, 2020. And let me show you really fast just how to look this up. And the reason I consider this is a possibility is because in the scriptures, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. Firmament sheweth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night sheweth knowledge. So the most amazing part of this would be if God does have these signs in the heavens, and he was like basically showing us, as it says in Revelation 12, that signs in the heavens are in likeness of things on the earth, for we know that the earth and his people are his love and his grand purpose. So it makes sense to me that he would have displays of things in the heavens happening. And if I'm wrong and I'm just kind of pulling coincidences together, then at the very worst, we have a very creative, artistic depiction of the scriptures. from my mind, so I will let you decide. But let me show you how I do this. So actually, let's just take a look at what it shows here first. So on March 18th, 2020, the Salt Lake House of the Lord earthquake shook Moroni's trumpet out, leading to the opening of the temple time capsule with Pratt's voice of warning book. So and that goes along with the Amos scriptures. So I found it really interesting as I looked for these keywords on this day, and they just appeared in very interesting places. So if you think about the trumpet, you have the word for trumpeter. This is 4538 in the Greek Strong's Concordance. It means trumpeter, and this is right here in the lion. So the King of Judah, Jesus is the king. We have the trumpet being blown, and the word for house, 1004 Hebrew. So a trumpet being blown from the house of the Lord. That's what happened on that day. You look at what is happening with the woman. Well, she is standing on, this is a warning. And what is the warning about? Trusting in the arm of flesh, trusting in man. She's standing on here, the asteroid called man, and also the word for idols, which is 1544 in Hebrew Strong's Concordance. She's standing on a not very good foundation. And this is the time that the Salt Lake Temple was having its foundations shored up. Perhaps this is a symbolism for us as a people. We need to fix our foundations and make sure our foundations are not idolatry and trusting in the flesh of man. And what do we have here? She has in her hand, so normally we have Spica here, and Spica is still there, but there is the asteroid, right? And that location is called Sickafus, so sick, sickness. Sick, I actually looked up the word foos, and it actually is a slang for the F word. So that was interesting. And I looked up the word Amos because this event, really, the idea came from the book of Amos, and there it is, Amos Av. So an Av means children. So children of Amos, those who are listening to the words of Amos. We also have what came forth from these events, lies. So very interesting. So let me show you a few of these really quick on Stellarium. So we will look up man, we'll look up Sisyphus and Amos Av. So also, if you want to read A Voice of Warning by Bradley Pratt, you can go to here, www.gutenberg.org. Just Google that, and you can read the full Voice of Warning book. Let's go to Stellarium. Let's go to March 18th. Go to man. Oh, I have the wrong year. Make sure you have the right year. 2020. Look up man. So you can see here, the woman is standing on man. And the sickness right here in her hand. So there you go. And you can check all of these things that I put on here. Go to the next one. So this is the same date, March 18th. So this was really interesting because you have this big clustering of all these planets. That immediately got my attention. We have Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the moon, all gathered together in the same location. So Daniel chapter 12, verse 10, it says, the wise shall understand. So those who are looking, trying to figure it out, it says, the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up. And then in Amos 3:14, it says, I will visit the altars of Bethel. So see on here some keywords. So the word for plague is the Hebrew Strong's number 1698. So it's plague or pestilence, meaning the same thing. And then if you look up the wise, that is 7919 Hebrew. And look how these are all clustered together. These keywords sum up in my mind what happened on this day and what this earthquake might be signaling to us as God's people. We have Bethel here. This is a sign in the Bethel, the house of the Lord, and at the foot is truth. There's a lot of confusion about truth. And look right here, we have Corona. So we have Parley Pratt talking about the day star. We also have President Holland talking about that very recently. And right here in the heart is the day star. So 5459 in Greek, Strong's Concordance. So Pratt's voice of warning. We also have a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto ye do well, that ye take heed as unto a light that shineth in a dark place until the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts. This treasure is foreknowledge. So I think he's really pleading with us to turn to God. It's important to go to church and to learn and to listen to our leaders and to the prophet, but it's important to not just stop there and to just expect everyone to endlessly spoon feed us. We need to go to God. We need to have the Spirit. We need to learn from God himself. And that is what the temple teaches us to do. So Amos 3:14, it says, the horns of the altar shall be cut off and fall to the ground. And if you look in the sky, the biggest horns, like depiction of the horns, are right here in Taurus. On the same day, March 18th, you have these big horns, and at the tip of the horn is the word truth or certainty. That is Strong's 7189 in Hebrew. And then the word for being cut off, 3772 in Hebrew, is at the base of the horn. So here you have the horn, truth, and certainty in the world being cut off. And the day star itself, we know that the day star, the morning, the evening star is Venus. So if we look by Venus, clustered around it were, again, these key words of foreknowledge, prophecy, and earthquake. You can see the numbers here to look that up and check that out. And here is just a little copy of this book. I recommend it. It's great. Jeffrey R. Holland's Our Day Star Rising. All right, so in Amos 3:6, it says, shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? An adversary shall be even round about the land, and he shall bring down thy strength from thee, and thy palaces shall be spoiled. That sounds like a good description of 2020 to me. So we have the voices of Daniel and Parley Pratt warn of judgments being poured out. So if we look near the sun, we know that in Luke it says the signs will be in the sun, the moon, and the stars. So if we look near the sun, we see the word Strong's Concordance for Daniel. We also see the asteroid is actually called Pratt right here in the sun. And also scourge, spoil, judgment, weakness, and sickness being poured out. And also the word for sound of a trumpet, which is 2690 in Hebrew. So I put a little trumpet here to just get a visual that we have this trumpet being blown, warning of our cities, our palaces being spoiled, judgment, weakness, and sickness being poured out. I also noticed that the word Ephraim is here. So you know that these signs and signals, the shaking of the temple and the trumpet and the voice of warning, these are for Ephraim. We are Ephraim. So are we listening? So this is just a possibility. Obviously, I don't know that this is exactly correct, but something to consider based on what we've seen in coming years, 2020 to 23. As I look back, I see that as a spiritual cleansing and a time of purifying. And I wonder if in the next 3 years we will see more of temporal cleansing and purifying. Seems like things are definitely being set up for World War III and chaos around the globe. So 2020 to 2023, we had in the church the higher, holier ways. We had I don't want to say it right here, I think, be careful what I say on YouTube, but the CV, this right here, that caused much confusion about truth. It tested our wisdom and pushed us to follow the guidance of the Spirit as we received conflicting messages. Excuse me. Temples worldwide were shut down. The world pretty much shut down in an unprecedented way, and we were stripped of many of our distracting idols, all the things we were used to, going about our normal life. So we look going into 2026 as being a possible cleansing of the host and sanctuary. We have the sign of 23, which was given to the church on 3/23/23. pointing to this idea of the Salt Lake Temple opening in 2006. And I think God is in control of all things, and he can use events like this to be a symbol of what he wants his people to experience as well. So even more than just it being about the Salt Lake Temple, it's about the Salt Lake Temple representing our hearts and our minds and our stance towards God as far as worship and love and faithfulness. So I'm really excited to share this with you guys because that whole idea of the October 7th, 2023 attack being a fulfillment of Daniel's prophecies, it came to my attention, and that there is another prophecy in Haggai 2. So it looks like this Haggai 2 scripture was pointing to the same date, so a second witness. So let's look at it. In Haggai chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "In the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by the prophet Haggai." So, the 21st day of the 7th month. That is this time frame. So, 21 Tishri. We know that Tishri is the 7th month. And you can read this part on your own and study this Haggai chapter 2. But in verse 7, it says, "I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts." So you can see down here, I copied that Tishri is the 7th month. So what we have in this scripture is a prophecy of shaking. It talks about what sounds like trials and war and things, but it's in the end to fill his house with glory. It's for the purifying of his people and getting them prepared. So Haggai chapter 2, another prophecy of October 7th. So something else that really sticks out is the idea that it talks about air, land, and sea. So that's something, I don't know if you noticed, but if you go back and you look at the news articles, it's always talking about how Hamas terrorists launched this surprise attack by air, sea, and land. So you can see down here, NBC News by land, air, and sea. I mean, Google that and you'll see endless titles explaining this attack being by air, land, and sea. So Haggai, he says, in verse 5, it says, "According to the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you. Fear ye not." All right, sorry, I had to pause and cough a little bit, so I lost my spot. It says, "For thus saith the Lord of hosts," in verse 6, "Yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations. I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts." So if that Haggai verse was pointing us to that October 7th attack, it's very interesting because just like the Daniel scripture, there's a secondary prophecy that would lead us to another future shaking. So in Haggai, he talks about two shakings. So if the first one was October 7th, then the second one could possibly be December 7th to 8th, 2023 time period. So we're going to explore that as a possibility. This might not be the correct interpretation, but we will find out soon enough. So it will be interesting to see. We'll know afterwards if this is on track or not. So December 7th, 2023 is Kislev, and it's the 24th day of the 9th month. So if you read what Haggai says, he says, next in that same chapter, he says, "Consider now from this day and upward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, even from the day that the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid, consider it." He says, "Is the seed yet in the barn?" I want you to remember that, because we're going to look at a sign in the heavens having to do with that. He says, "I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, that I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen." And he goes on. You can read the rest about what he's going to destroy. So, just to look at what else is happening on December 7th, 2023. We know that this year is the first day of Hanukkah. So Hanukkah lands on a different day every year because it's based on the lunar Jewish calendar. So this year, interestingly enough, it does land on December 7th, which is this 24th day of the 9th month. And it also happens to be Pearl Harbor Anniversary Day. On December 8th, 2023 is the 3-year anniversary from the first day the concoction that can be put into your shoulder was given for the first one in the world, exactly 3 years. That's kind of interesting. This made me think, well, I'm going to consider this as a possibility. So we know that Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of rededication, so Hanukkah for Hebrew year 5784 begins at sundown on Thursday, December 7th, 2023, and ends at nightfall on Friday, December 15th, 2023. So really, we should keep an eye on this time period, December 7th to December 15th, 2023. We'll see if anything happens. So, Haggai's 24th day of the 9th month. This is a Hanukkah prophecy. So Hanukkah, or you can call it Chanukah, was celebrating the cleansing and rededication of the Second Temple. So you know that the original restoration of the temple was on November 21st, 164 BC. So it's kind of cool how all of these things and dates are tying into this Hanukkah theme. I can't wait to show you some really interesting symbolism and themes that come forth from this Hanukkah holy time. So we know that in Strong's Concordance, the number for Hanukkah is 2598. So in my previous video, I actually had talked about Hanukkah and some signs in the heavens. So the Hanukkah cleansing of the temple and rededication signs are linked to rebirth and the sign of 23, where 23 is death and rebirth. So this idea of rededication, rebirth, cleansing, renewal, they keep appearing in the heavens and in the scriptures. And I noted in my past video that I was examining the Revelation 12 sign in 2023. For 9 months, there was a circling of the Bride and Emperor asteroids. And the Bride asteroid is connected from the root word bridal chamber. So the bride in the bridal chamber. And then the actual name of that asteroid is Ojima. So it's Ojima 3565, the bride linked to the bridal chamber. And the name of the asteroid, Bija, which is number 1564, is the word for embryo. So these two were circling in the womb of the woman. If you go back to my Hanukkah video, the blood moons, I show it on Stellarium. You can see that. Circles in the womb for 9 months. From Hanukkah, December 18th, 2022, the conception date, to the Revelation 12 sign, September 18th, 2023, to the birth of the child date. So if you put that into a pregnancy calculator, I did it right here, you can see the conception date, December 18th, Hanukkah, and then the Revelation 12 sign. So you have this pregnancy rebirth imagery in the heavens. But there's even more. Excuse me. So the asteroid Ojima, it actually means, so the actual word Ojima, if you Google it, it's an Igala word meaning the glory of God. How beautiful. And so the number 3565 in Hebrew, the Strong's meaning is the bride, related to the bride chamber. And I thought this was really beautiful that it was in the sun. You can see right here, Ojima in the sun on November 21st, 2023. So this goes along. I wish I had discovered that and put it in my Thinking Celestial video before, because that just adds to that gorgeous imagery on November 21st. But In Psalms 19:1, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night sheweth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices as a strong man to run a race." So you have the sun as the bridegroom, and you have the bride, and look, they're right on top of each other, right next to each other on November 21st. How beautiful imagery is that? All right, so it gets even more amazing with the Hanukkah imagery. So Hebrew feast Hanukkah and human childbirth. So I just discovered this. I'd never heard this before, but I found this that some people have pointed out. There was, I think, a Jewish turned Christian man who discovered this, and he got together with a gynecologist and an OB doctor to just confirm that these Hebrew holy dates like match up perfectly with the stages of the development of human. So the average human pregnancy is 280 days, so 40 weeks. The Jewish lunar year is 280 days from Passover to Hanukkah. So Hanukkah is like the birth time. And as far as the Gregorian calendar, so the way that we look at things, if a pregnancy started on the first day of spring, on March 21st, it would end on December 25th. So we kind of have these parallels. This is why I feel like not only should we look at the times of Hanukkah, it's a very Jewish way to look at a time of birth, and I'd say the non-Jewish way to look at it with the Gregorian calendar would be Christmas. So I wonder if there might be parallel events. If something happens during that Hanukkah time, perhaps there will be a parallel thing happening around Christmas time. So first you have the Passover. The egg appears on the 14th day of the first month. So in Leviticus 23:5, he instructs Moses to observe Passover in the 14th day of the first month. In the Passover seder meal, Jews use an egg on the table as a symbol for new life. The 14th day of a pregnancy brings the same thing as the 14th day of Passover, a chance for new life. Then you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Within 24 hours, fertilization must occur or the egg will pass, unfertilized and life unrealized. Planting of the seed. This is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The sinless Savior died and was buried, planted for our sins, making it possible for us to have new life through reconciliation through him to God. Next, we have the Feast of First Fruits. So there's an indeterminate time that the egg travels down the tube toward the uterus and can take anywhere from 2 to 6 days before it implants. This suggests the Festival of First Fruits, the spring planting, which also does not fall on a specific date, but occurs on Nisan 16, day 1 of the Omer. This implantation gives rise to the growth of a seed into a mature plant, or in the case of human pregnancy, a mature human being. Then you have Shavuot, also known as Pentecost. We now have a slowly developing embryo. It goes through stages before it becomes a fetus, which is the next big event. In these indiscriminate stages, you can't tell if the embryo is a fish, tadpole, or anything relatively human. But on the 50th day, so that's the day of Pentecost, it becomes a recognizable human fetus. From an embryo to a human being. On Shavuot, or Pentecost, 50 days after Passover, the unregenerate Israelites became new creatures. As believers in a spiritual sense, they would now go on to another life outside their flesh bodies, as the fetus would go on to another life outside its mother's body. Next, the Feast of Trumpets. The momentous occasion in the life of a pregnancy is at the beginning of the 7th month. This is when the baby's hearing becomes fully developed, so you can talk to your baby. At the first day of the 7th month, the baby can discriminate a sound for what it really is. For instance, a trumpet is a trumpet, which is the festival of Feast of Trumpets that occurs at this time. You can hear the call of the last trump. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The next development in the fetus is the changing of the fetus's blood into self-sustaining, self-circulating, and self-respirating that allows the baby to live outside its mother's womb. It is no longer dependent upon the oxygen in the mother's blood. This correlates to the blood that represents Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This is when the baby can be born and survive. In Jesus' blood, there's life. The fetus must also present blood that is acceptable, mature, ready for self-sustained life. And next, the Feast of Tabernacles. The next development is when the lungs are developed, which allows safe delivery of the baby. Its lungs are developed on the 15th, and the baby can take its own air and live on it. This corresponds to the date of Feast of Tabernacles. The Tabernacles is the house of the Spirit. Adonai breathed into Adam's lungs and gave him life. Yeshua blew the Ruach HaKodesh onto the disciples, the breath of life. In Ezekiel 37, Hashem says, "Come from four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain that they may live." So breath of life. And then finally, the birth, we have Hanukkah. So 25th of Kislev. So the 24th is the eve, the evening before. 25th is the first full day. The actual normal birth time is 280 days. From Passover to Hanukkah is 280 days. Hanukkah was prophesied by Daniel in Daniel 8, 9-14, and fulfilled for the first time on November 21st in 165 BC when the temple was rededicated. Hanukkah has to do with the eternal light and the servant lamp. Who is the eternal light but Jesus, which foretells for us what is beyond the festivals, eternity with the eternal light? So I think it's beautiful that I think in so many ways we'll eventually find out how all things, literally all things, testify of Jesus Christ. So the Strong's number for Hanukkah is 2598. And I found this online. This is a new edition that somebody had discovered, that each of these sets of blood moons and eclipses are all separated by 2,598 days. So we have 9 sets of blood moons and eclipses spaced out by 2,598 days over 9 years' time. So starting in 2014 until 2023. And this very last one here, you can see the final eclipse that happened on October 28, 2023. That was exactly 40 days before Hanukkah, December 7th, 2023. I find all these 9s very interesting. President Nelson is 99 years old currently. We know that the number 9 is tied to birth, the 9 months of pregnancy. It also is very much tied into warnings for the Jews, the 9th of Av. And again, on my previous video, having to do with covenant, curses, 9/11, I talk about all the ways that 9 and the 9th of Av has to do with warnings for the Jews. So pretty interesting. So we see these, if you look for it, you see these patterns everywhere all the time in the church. And I found it, I actually just discovered that the lie, maybe I'm not saying that right, the Hawaii Temple rededicated by President Monson this was rededicated. So again, this Hanukkah theme of rededicating a temple was done on November 21st, 2010. So President Monson, he was president of the church. He rededicated the temple. It was on a Sunday, so it's kind of unusual, maybe, after an extensive closure for renovation. This Hawaii temple has been the centerpiece of Latter-day Saint faith in the Hawaiian Islands since its initial dedication in 1919. So the Laie Hawaii Temple was the 5th operating temple in the world and the first completed outside the state of Utah. It's pretty amazing. I didn't know that. That's news to me. So, do the numbers and holy day anniversaries mean anything? I would say, of course, because Jesus was a Jew. The Jews love numbers and symbolism. So John 10:22, it says, "And it was at Jerusalem the feast of the dedication. It was winter. Jesus came to Jerusalem for the observance of Hanukkah, celebrating the festival in the same temple that was cleansed by the Maccabees in the 2nd century BC. So we see here Jesus recognizing Hanukkah. I find something else interesting about this temple is the symbolic design. So I looked up here. This is the BYU article. It explained that the shape of the Hawaii temple is a Greek cross. So I guess it's almost more like a middle cross, and that the vertical and horizontal lines are equal. It says representing the 4 directions of the earth and the spread of the gospel there too. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, Isaiah said, and gather together the dispersed from the 4 corners of the earth. How cool is that? All right, now I told you we'd come back to this idea. So the same scripture that's talking about 2 shakings, we know that the first may have been fulfilled in the October 7th attack. It was on the day specified in Haggai. It's very specific. And this date that he talks about, the 4 and 20th day of the 9th month, he mentions this multiple times. He's really highlighting it. And here it's interesting that he ties it into even from the day of the foundation of the Lord's temple. So right now, the foundation of the Lord's temple is being fixed. And right here it says, is the seed yet in the barn? And he says, I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen. So I thought to myself, I'm going to look on this day, and if I look for the word seed and the word barn, and they're stacked on top of each other, that's a pretty big indicator that I have to really consider this. So I looked it up, and the seed is in the barn. And if you get where it is, you can see it. So the seed and the barn, you can see the bear's paw is striking right here. And look at the location is right in the eye of this lynx. So we know that the bear, this idea of, we have a prophecy from Joseph Smith where the bear lays its paw on the lion. I talked about it in a previous video. That's how you know that World War III is coming and that Christ is at the door. The second coming is close. So, okay, I'm going to take you to Symbolism so you can see this seed in the barn. Let me go to it. Okay. Because this is just wild. I couldn't believe it. I mean, sometimes in my head, I just say, if I look for this and it's there, I'm going to die. I'm going to keel over. I'm so surprised if it is, but it always is. Okay, so you guys have been watching long enough to know. Oh my God, there are no coincidences. Okay, so let's go to Stellarium. So we're gonna go back up to 2023. December 7th is the day we are wondering about. And so the Strong's Concordance Hebrew number for seed is 2234. And the name, so if you go to, you cannot look up numbers on Stellarium, so you have to go to the NASA. If you just Google NASA, small body database lookup, and I would look up that number, 2234. You can see the name is Shmuddel. So Shmuddel. There we go, right in the eye of the lynx. The number for barn is 4460 Hebrew, and I already looked it up. It is Bihoro, the name. I looked up on the NASA index. There you go, look. See that? Okay, watch it. It's going to happen fast. I can only pull up one asteroid at a time. So as far as that's all I know how to do, which makes this process difficult for me to show you guys things. I wish that I could click a bunch of asteroids and have them stay, but here we go. So we have the barn. Now let's go back to the seed. Okay, there it goes. They are right next to each other. Pretty interesting. Now, let's go back. All right, so the seed and the barn right next to each other. So let's look for more signs on the Earth and anniversary stacking. Let's look at some other little clues here. So December 8th, 2020, we have the first one of these in the world given. So UK grandmother has become the first person in the world to be given this as part of a mass program. So she said this was the best early birthday present. And you see here, December 8th, 2020. All right, Hanukkah. So December 7th to 15th. Keep our eyes on this time. Celebrating the cleansing, rededication of the temple. This originally happened on November 21st. We're also watching that date and doing our challenge, which has been amazing. I've loved it. And then we have December 7th is the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. So this is kind of weird, but I just ran across it, so I thought I'd throw it in there. Take it or leave it. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not. It says sign on the Earth, worldly, powerful men. So Barack Obama, I did not know this, but he's actually an executive producer of various films. And he's actually coming out with a movie. It's an apocalypse movie, and it's coming out this December 8th, 2023. So you can see here, I did some clips from online. So he runs the Higher Ground boards. So Higher Ground boards, Barack and Michelle Obama's Higher Ground has joined the Netflix film Leave the World Behind. So what is the message of Leave the World Behind? It's a key theme of Leave the World Behind is that an apocalyptic event would likely not look like our assumptions. Rather than the mass chaos that is often depicted in fictional portrayals of apocalypses, it is a slow, almost banal process driven by confusion and disconnection from rational explanation. There you go. See you December 8th. All right, so let's take a look at Habakkuk 2:1, because Habakkuk has to do with this same theme, cleansing and rededication. It's about God's wrath humbling the prideful, idolatrous people, while at the same time having mercy on the faithful. So Habakkuk 2:1 says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak, and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire is hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. For the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, for the violence of the land, the city and the land that dwell therein. What profiteth the graven image that the maker thereof hath graven it? The molten image and a teacher of lies, the maker of his work trusteth therein to make dumb idols. So that theme connected to the abomination of desolation is we're really worried about what we're making with our hands, our houses, our things, our sports, our entertainment. But here it says that for the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee. And I find it interesting that right now in the headlines, Lebanon is all over the place. Israeli jets strike south of Lebanon after Hezbollah attack. Lebanon front with Israel heats up, stoking fears of wider war. Attacks by Lebanon's Hezbollah group wound 7 Israeli troops. I threw in the rainbow to remember that God also has mercy. Even in the midst of his wrath, he has mercy. So that's something that I'm praying for, that God will have mercy, focusing on repentance. And then in Habakkuk 3, I found some just interesting words that I wanted to share with you. He says, O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years make known. In wrath remember mercy. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. So you have the glory in the heaven, and the earth full of his praise, all things testifying of Jesus Christ. And his brightness was as the light, and there was the hiding of his power. Before him went the pestilence. If you go to Strong's Concordance, pestilence and plague is the same word. And burning coals went forth at his feet. He stood and measured the earth. So remember that Pratt saw the compass sign in the heavens the year the church was born. He beheld and drove asunder the nations. Thy bow, if you go to Strong's Concordance, this is the same root word as the rainbow, was made quite naked, according to the oaths of the tribes, even thy word. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of thine arrows they went. Now, I'm going to show you this on another slide, but on the same date, on December 7th, you can actually see right here, this is the asteroid for the word arrow, and it looks here like Sagittarius is shooting an arrow, kind of highlighting what is happening in this arrow with the sun and the Mars converging and a lot of other interesting things that I will show you soon. It says, thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, even for salvation with thine anointed. Thou woundest the head out of the house of the wicked by discovering the foundation under the neck, Selah. So we've had multiple General Conference talks. Look it up. Just look up. They keep talking about using the Salt Lake Temple as an analogy for fixing our foundation. So I definitely have used this as a reason to examine my own foundations over the years. All right, so from December 7th to December 25th, the asteroid Arrow 2687 Hebrew, named Avasaksa, passes through the sun, moon, and Mars. So Mars can be a symbol of war, and I usually don't look up the meaning of the words because there's so many, but this one I felt impressed to look it up, and it was kind of stunning. It says that this word Avasaksa is often considered the southernmost point in Finland where the midnight sun is literally visible. So immediately my mind in scriptures, and at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom comes. Go you out to meet him. And we have Elder Benner, who just a few years ago talked about that analogy of the wedding feast. And we've had a lot of talks about the 10 virgins and the wedding feast and the bridegroom, because he's coming. Jesus, the bridegroom, he's coming soon. On October 7th, 2023, now this is amazing, guys. This is really amazing. So October 7th, 2023, we have the Pratt. So the actual name of the asteroid Pratt is at the tip of the bow and arrow. And his voice of warning book came forth and was validated on this day in conjunction with the earthquake. So we had the earthquake first, and then the book came forth. And, we didn't know, it wasn't really validated, at least in my mind, until October 7th when we saw that fulfilled. Look, the tip of the arrow. Pratt was on point. What are the odds that that would be there on that date? Okay, so I normally would not consider this stuff and certainly wouldn't include it. I'm not really big into going off or caring a lot about, other people's, dreams and visions. There have been a lot of books and things, and some of them I definitely don't like, but I'm not going to close my mind. I'm not going to harden my heart. I think we can always just leave the door open a little bit to consider it. We can always put it on the maybe shelf, even if it's just to see, well, let's wait and see, be aware of it. And then if those things do start happening, we'll be aware that it is being fulfilled and we'll know what they were saying and warning about. So members having dreams and visions. So I think as long as we keep this in its proper place, right? We don't run wild with it. We don't use that to usurp what the prophet and the apostles and the church. We stay within in a good place on our solid foundation and always listening to the Spirit. But I think it's okay to listen and consider these things carefully. So Pratt's voice of warning, it validates dreams and prophecy as gifts of members. Now, you always have to take it with a big grain of salt and learn by the Spirit, but let's watch. So apparently somebody pointed this out to me, that someone named Sarah Monet had a vision of the last days, and I am not familiar with everything that she said, but she did say, I guess she had passed away and she was shown some things. And so she says the missile flew from Libya and hit Israel. and the mushroom cloud that resulted from the blast was visible, and I knew that the missile contained a nuclear bomb. And apparently she did accurately predict 9/11. I guess her book came out after 9/11, so you could argue that she was just saying that, but she says she had told a lot of people. Don't know how valid that is, but in her book, she does say that she knew beforehand that she saw 9/11 and the two towers and has a description of that. So, will she be right with the Libya-Israel attack, considering there's a lot happening there? We will find that out soon. So, something to keep our eyes on. I also have John Coyle prophecies again. I'm not very familiar with this, but I did run across this idea that he at one point had said the US government will keep propping up the economy as if it were on stilts until finally it would suddenly collapse overnight. He said the overnight crash would occur on a holiday weekend where the holiday falls on a Monday. He was shown that our entire wage and price structure had risen, so a lot of inflation. I mean, this sounds on point to me. Right now, I feel like maybe either one of these could happen. I'm not hanging my hat that it will, but we can watch. And December 25th is a Monday in 2023. So if a big World War III event happens, it could crash the economy overnight. You might have a cyber attack on banks, or if anything went nuclear now, you might think, oh, a nuclear bomb like that's going to happen. That's too big. But as far as what I've come to learn from studying this possibility of nuclear, we used to think it cannot happen because it would annihilate all life. But the thing is they have limited nuclear weapons now. So you could use limited nuclear weapons that wouldn't have the same devastating effects. And just a lot of people in the know have put out a lot of information saying that it's kind of inevitable to have some limited nuclear use. And we're not talking the end of the world, nuclear winter, that kind of thing, but just that there could be areas where nuclear means are utilized. So it is a possibility. I hope not. I really hope none of that happens. I think it helps to be aware and watch. So December 7th and 8th, 2023. We'll have to wait and see if there's another, as Haggai says, the second, another shaking. So again, I looked up on this date, found some pretty interesting things. And again, maybe this is just a coincidence, but we'll have to see. So you have to keep in mind with these names as well as these asteroids are moving. So I feel like this could happen. Doesn't mean that anything, if it's going to happen, will happen on this date. It would just happen within this time frame, anywhere from Hanukkah to Christmas time to the end of the year. I feel like something big happened within that time frame, then this would have something to do with it. So like I said, this is a hypothesis, and we'll know by the end of the month if it's just my creative imagination putting things together, or if these are truly signs in the heavens that are warning us of something. So Haggai 2, here's just a few highlights. He talks about, I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remaineth among you. Fear ye not. He says, in a little while I will shake all nations. So let's see. He says, the priest answered and said, it shall be unclean. Then answered Haggai and said, so is this people, and so is this nation before me. And so is every work of their hands, and that which they offer there is unclean. I smote you with a blasting, and with mildew, and with hail, in all your labors of your hands, yet you turn not to me, saith the Lord. So here you can see at the foot of the woman is the asteroid Demon, 1140 Greek, and blasting. So here it talks about blasting. Right here in the scales of judgment in Libra, you also have Israel and the word gather and the word unclean. It's interesting because you have unclean here by Israel in the scales, but if you look at the heart of the lion, you have a word that is directly connected to washing and becoming clean in the temple. So in the ancient days, the Israelites would wash their hands and feet in the bronze laver. And they had to do this before they could become clean to enter into the temple. And you have that laver here at the heart of the lion. Now, if you're looking biblical terms for these people and these kingdoms, you have the king of Persia. So Iran is also Persia. They consider themselves the Persians. So you have the king of Persia right here at the arm of the woman. And we were talking about that ceremony thing, and I thought, well, I'll look up and see if there's anything having to do with Libya and anything having to do with a bomb or explosion, and this was pretty crazy. So you have Venus here, and right next to it is the asteroid's actual name is Libya. If you go to Solarium and you look up Libya, it's right next to Venus, and then right next to it is this word bomb belly, and belly means a torch, so a big torch bomb, and also the asteroid Gaul. That has biblical connections to nuclear things. And I talked about that in past videos, but this idea of Gaul being linked to nuclear warnings. And the word media, so the media is ancient Iran. So anything media, Medes, Persians, has to do with Iran. So you have this idea of if there were to be a bomb coming out of Libya, it would probably be backed by the Iranians. And actually, let's look at that possibility of something happening in Libya. So I looked this up. Let me just show you. You go to Libya. So this year, there was Storm Daniel. This was September 26, 2023. Storm Daniel, of all names. And it killed at least 4,199 people or have known to have died in that storm. So a storm that killed thousands of people and left thousands more missing in Libya is the latest blow to a country that has been gutted by years of chaos. So what is the current situation in Libya? Here it says foreign forces and mercenaries continue to operate in Libya. The interim government of national unity has limited control of security provision across the country. The lack of political stability has led to security incidents, road and airport closures, and oil blockades. So unstable. Then this was just a couple weeks ago on Bloomberg. It says Putin's move to secure Libya bases is new regional worry for U.S. Oh, there you go. Interesting stuff. Scary possibilities, honestly. Now, if you looked at 9/11, it's very interesting because a lot of scriptures that coalesce and align with what happened on 9/11 actually happen. If you look at Isaiah chapter 9, verse 11, and if you watch my video on that one, Covenant Israel, you'll find some very interesting connections. And you might think, well, the numbers in scriptures don't have anything to do with the dates, but I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I thought it was interesting that, so December 7th and 8th, we looked at chapter 12, 7 and 8 of Mosiah, it says, and they shall be smitten with a great pestilence, and all this will I do because of their iniquities and abominations. And it shall come to pass that except they repent, I will utterly destroy them from off the face of the earth, and I will preserve them for other nations, which shall possess the land. Yea, even this will I do, that I may discover the abominations of this people to other nations. So kind of interesting, that was about that abomination of desolation theme, which we are seeing playing out. Excuse me. Sorry, I always cough in these videos. I'm sorry. Okay. Hanukkah, December 7th to 15th, 2023. So watch for wrath poured out. So something that stood out as I was looking again, you look for the sun, the moon, and the stars, and where these bodies are and what is congregating around the sun. So you have Mars and the sun really close, and this idea of Mars being like war. We have the asteroid Arrow. We have a lot of things happening in the Sagittarius area, and it's interesting because December is the time of Sagittarius. So that's kind of an interesting thought. But this word was so weird, I had to look it up. So it's actually, the Strong's meaning is earthquake. But the actual meaning of this word, there was a 17th, in the 1600s, a 17th century mushroom cloud, the Wong-Gong-Chang explosion. Apparently it's a mystery. They don't even know exactly what happened. But it says on May 30th, 1626, an imperial armory just west of the Forbidden City exploded with a force rivaling that of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It remains one of the deadliest non-military explosions in history. So that's kind of crazy. We have Egypt here. We know that Egypt is really a parallel and likeness of America. We hear the word bomb, big bomb here right next to, look, Mercury is perfectly one of the main stars. In fact, this part of Sagittarius looks like a little tabernacle if you look at it right here. At the very tip is Mercury. Mercury often has to do with messages and warnings. Then we have right here at the perfectly in the middle of the head of Sagittarius, the word warning, 2094 in Hebrew, Strong's, and also Habakkuk. So we're talking about the words of Habakkuk. Let's look at what Habakkuk says. 3:2, O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make known. In wrath, remember mercy. The sun and the moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of thine arrows they went. We have, go the line of thine arrows. We have the word shake, 5287 in Hebrew. And then if you come over here to Aquarius, the word for hail. So in Haggai 2, it says, I smote you with blasting. So we have these blasting bombs and with mildew and with hail in all the labors of your hands, yet you turn not to me, saith the Lord. We have hail at the top. Aquarius is pouring this out, and at the bottom is the word death. That's not looking good. I hope this means nothing. I hope this is just me looking at scriptures, seeing a bunch of coincidental alignments. We're just hoping that nothing like that happens. But 1 Thessalonians 5:4, but ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. This is why I show you these things. We want to watch and be sober, be aware. Where are the possibilities? For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for an helmet the hope of salvation. You need to be sober, but also remember to not be anxious and not be scared. Do not fear, for God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ. We know that if we are relying on, we're close to Jesus Christ, then we will obtain salvation. He'll protect us. He will help us. So more birthing signs in 2023. There's so many birthing signs. So the conjunction points to the winter solstice Christmas. So this winter solstice is December 21st. But if you get into technicalities of it, it's kind of over multiple days. And it kind of just bleeds into Christmas. So looking at that time frame, so winter solstice is the darkest day of the year and the first day of winter, and it's connected to Christmas. So December 24th is 12 Tevet. What do you know? Another coincidence this year. On this day, Ezekiel prophesies Egypt would be destroyed. So this was in 424 BCE. Ezekiel chapter 29 verse 9 says, and the land of Egypt shall be desolate and waste, and they shall know that I am the Lord. So we're going to talk about this conjunction. It kind of points to this Christmas time frame. And December 24th is 12 Tevet. So 12 Tevet, and again, every year, 12 Tevet does not always fall on December 24th or Christmas. Ezekiel prophesies destruction of Egypt. Egypt is a parallel likeness of America. And I wonder if America's economic strength becomes desolate. If we look at just the signs all around us, there are a lot of warning indicators in the economy. In a lot of ways, the strength of America was built on our economy. So in my mind, I'm wondering what's going to happen with our economy before the end of the year. On Thursday, March 2nd, 2023, there are two planetary conjunctions. So you have Venus conjunction with Jupiter, and then 9 hours later, there was a Mercury conjunction with Saturn. So a double conjunction. In my past videos, I talked about some really interesting things. Before I was really aware of this, I'd had some interesting dreams regarding war, second coming, things like that. But there was a similar conjunction before the birth of Christ with the same pregnancy long waiting period before his birth. So John Brott says about the conjunction before Christ's birth. So it's something that he wrote. It said the implications of an April 6th birth for Christ for the spectacular sign in the heavens makes it even more impressive and its meaning clearer. So he basically talks about how, you can read this for yourself, but how there was a conjunction of Jupiter and Venus that occurred around the conception time before Jesus was born. And so us seeing that same thing, if you then use that as a conception date and calculate to the time of birth, that lands on winter solstice. So just another, it seems like there are so many birthing signs in the heavens that I keep noticing. So Psalms 111. The works of the Lord are great. His work is honorable and glorious, and his righteousness endureth forever. He hath made his wonderful works to be remembered. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion. He hath given meat unto them that fear him. He will ever be mindful of his covenant. He sent redemption unto his people. He hath commanded his covenant forever. Holy and reverend is his name. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever. So let's bloom despite the doom and gloom like a true fire poppy. So Zion field of many fire poppies will reduce erosion after fire. So join us for more fiery passion and preparedness as we fly into the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I know that Jesus Christ is coming soon and that his hand is over all of us. He says that at the time before there were hard times in the past, he said that he would gather us like a hen gathers its chicks. And I know that Jesus Christ is ready and waiting, and in every single moment we can turn to him in prayer and feel his presence and his love and his peace and his comfort, regardless of what's happening in the world. And thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time on Christian Fire Poppy.